The train lurches forward, and through the window, you watch the station platform descend into chaos. Screaming people sprint past, some falling, others being dragged down by figures that move with an unnatural, jerking gait. Your phone buzzes with emergency alerts you don't have time to read. The conductor's voice crackles over the intercom, shaky and uncertain. We're not stopping. Hold on to something. And just like that, you're trapped on a speeding train with 100 strangers as the world outside tears itself apart. Welcome to one of the most unique and challenging survival scenarios you could face, a zombie apocalypse on a moving train. Now, at first glance, being on a train when the dead start rising might seem like a stroke of incredible luck. You're mobile, you're away from the initial chaos, and you've got a metal barrier between you and the shambling hordes. But here's the thing, that train is also a sealed environment with limited resources, strangers who might panic or turn on you, and a very finite lifespan measured in fuel tanks and miles of track. So could you actually survive? Let's break down this rolling survival scenario and figure out if you'd make it to the next station, or if this train becomes your tomb. Let's start with the immediate problem. The outbreak happens while you're already aboard. Maybe the train left a station just as things went sideways, or perhaps someone got on already infected. Either way, within the first hour, you're going to face the most dangerous period of this entire scenario, the initial panic. Here's what you need to understand about human behavior in crisis situations. When people don't know what's happening, they make terrible decisions. Someone sees another passenger acting strangely, gets bitten, and doesn't tell anyone because they're in denial. Another person tries to help what they think is an injured passenger, getting too close to someone who's already turned. Within minutes, you could have multiple infected people in various cars, and a train full of panicking civilians who have no idea what's happening. Your first move? Get to a defensible position immediately. Don't be a hero yet. The middle cars of a passenger train are your worst option. You're surrounded on both sides with no control over who's coming through those doors. You want to move toward either the front or rear of the train. The rear has one major advantage. There's only one direction threats can come from. The front gives you proximity to the conductor and engineer, people who might have information and control over the train itself. As you move, you need to assess who's with you, and this is where things get psychologically complicated. You're surrounded by strangers, and some of them are going to be assets, while others become liabilities. Look for people who are calm under pressure, physically capable, and willing to follow a plan. That businesswoman who's directing people to move away from the infected, she's a leader. The college athlete who's already using his belt to secure a door, he's a problem solver. The guy having a complete meltdown and trying to jump off a moving train, you can't save everyone, and that's a hard truth you need to accept in the first 10 minutes. Once you've found a defensible car, and a small group of people who aren't completely losing it, you need to think about compartmentalization. Trains are designed with connecting doors between cars, which is normally convenient, but now represents your biggest vulnerability. Every door is a potential entry point for infected passengers from other parts of the train. Here's where you get creative with whatever materials you have available. Luggage can be stacked to create barriers. Seat cushions can be removed and wedged into doorways. If you're on a train with a dining car, you've got access to tablecloths, which can be torn into strips and used as rope. Heavier items like suitcases become your barricade materials. You're not trying to make it impossible to get through. You just need enough of a barrier to slow down any infected and alert you to their presence. But here's the real question. Do you try to save people in other cars? This is where the moral calculus of survival gets brutal. If you can see survivors in the next car through the connecting door window and they're not overrun yet, you might be able to get them into your secure area. But opening that door, even for a second, is a massive risk. One infected person pushing through, and you've compromised everything. The cold reality? You probably can't save everyone on the train. You have to prioritize the people in your immediate area and focus on creating one safe zone rather than trying to clear the entire train. It sounds harsh, but attempting to rescue people from every car while zombies are actively spreading is how you get yourself killed. Now let's talk about something nobody wants to think about, but absolutely determines your survival: resources. A passenger train isn't stocked for a siege. You've got whatever food and water people brought with them, plus whatever's in the dining or snack car if your train has one. Do the math with me. Let's say you've secured a car with 20 survivors. The average person needs about half a gallon of water per day just to stay alive. More if you're stressed and moving around. That's 10 gallons per day for your group. Even if people had water bottles, you might have enough for 2 or 3 days if you're lucky and ration strictly. Food? Maybe a few more days if everyone shares the snacks and sandwiches they brought for what was supposed to be a normal train ride. But we're talking a week maximum before you're completely out. And this is where the train's movement becomes both your greatest asset and your biggest problem. Every mile you travel is a mile away from potential resource locations, towns, stores, supply depots. But stopping the train? That's when things get really dangerous. If you're still with me, do me a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next survival scenario. Here's something most people don't consider. That train is going to run out of fuel or power eventually. A diesel locomotive might have enough fuel for several hundred miles, maybe more depending on the load and speed. An electric train depends on the power grid staying operational. How long do you think the electrical infrastructure lasts once society starts collapsing? Hours? Days? You're on borrowed time. This creates an impossible dilemma. Do you try to keep the train running as long as possible, covering maximum distance from the initial outbreak zone? Or do you look for a strategic place to stop while you still have some control over where and when that happens? Let's game out both scenarios. If you keep going until the fuel runs out, you might end up stranded in the worst possible location, middle of nowhere, no resources, and you've got to disembark and travel on foot through potentially infected territory. But if you stop too early, you might not have escaped the heaviest zombie concentrations yet. The smart play? Find a station or stop in a smaller town or rural area, somewhere you can see from the train that isn't completely overrun, somewhere with buildings you could potentially secure, and distance from major population centers where the infection would spread fastest. You're looking for that Goldilocks zone, far enough from the chaos but not so isolated that you can't find supplies. When you do finally stop, whether by choice or because the fuel's gone, you're about to face the most dangerous moment of this entire scenario. Up until now, the train's movement has been your protection. Zombies can't board a moving train, but the second those wheels stop turning, you're vulnerable. Before you open any doors, you need intelligence. What's waiting outside? Are there infected nearby? Are there other survivors? This is where having someone who can access the conductor's cabin pays off. The radio might still be working. You might be able to contact other survivors, or at least listen to emergency broadcasts to understand how widespread this outbreak is. When you do disembark, you need a plan, and it can't be everyone rush off the train at once. That's how people get separated, injured, or killed. You send out a small, capable team first. Your best fighters, your most alert people. They secure a perimeter around the train, check the immediate area, and only then do you start evacuating the rest of your group. And here's something crucial. Don't abandon the train completely if you can help it. That train car is a secured, defensible structure. If you're stopping at a station, use the train as your home base while you scout the surrounding area. It's easier to defend than most buildings, and you can always reboard quickly if you need to retreat. Now, assuming you've survived this far, let's talk about the unique advantages a train gives you for long-term survival. Train tracks are like roads, but better. They're cleared paths that connect towns and cities. They pass near water sources because historical railroad planning required access to water. They often run through less densely populated areas. If you can find a way to get the train moving again, refueling from depot tanks, switching to a manual handcar for smaller groups, or even just using the tracks as your travel route on foot, you've got a massive advantage over survivors trying to navigate through cities and neighborhoods packed with undead. Rail yards become your target destinations. They've got maintenance equipment, tools, spare parts, and sometimes emergency supplies. They're industrial areas, usually fenced, often separated from residential zones. With some work, a rail yard could become a fortress. But here's the creative survival strategy most people wouldn't think of. You could potentially create a mobile community, find multiple train cars, connect them, and establish a rolling settlement. One car becomes your sleeping quarters, another stores supplies, another is your workshop. You move when resources in an area are depleted. You stop when you find a good supply location. You're never stuck in one place, never trapped if a horde moves through. It's ambitious. It requires mechanical knowledge and a lot of luck finding working equipment, but it's possible. And in a zombie apocalypse, mobility is survival. We need to talk about something that's going to be harder than fighting zombies: managing the people you're with. Confined spaces and constant stress create friction. After a few days on that train, people are going to crack. Someone's going to challenge decisions. Someone's going to hoard supplies. Someone's going to suggest leaving the injured behind. You need rules, fast. Who makes decisions? How are resources distributed? What happens if someone gets bitten? These aren't philosophical questions. They're immediate, practical concerns that will tear your group apart if you don't address them. And here's the really dark scenario you need to prepare for. What do you do when someone in your group is bitten? On a normal survival situation, You'd quarantine them and hope for the best. On a train with limited space and no escape route, a turning survivor is a death sentence for everyone. You need to decide as a group before it happens what the protocol is. It's brutal, but having that conversation early is the only way to prevent chaos later. Finally, let's talk about something nobody focuses on enough: your psychological survival. Being trapped on a train during the apocalypse is claustrophobic, stressful, and terrifying. You're going to see things you can't unsee. You're going to make decisions that haunt you. You're going to lose people. The survivors who make it aren't just the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who can maintain their mental stability. You need routines, even small ones. You need to find moments of normalcy. You need to connect with the people around you, because isolation and despair are as deadly as any zombie bite. Talk to people. Share stories. Remember that you're still human. The apocalypse wants to strip away your humanity, but that's what separates you from the things trying to kill you. Hold on to it. So could you survive a zombie apocalypse on a moving train? The answer is maybe, if you're smart, lucky, and willing to make hard choices fast. The train gives you mobility and temporary safety, but it's not a permanent solution. Your survival depends on recognizing that within the first hour, securing resources immediately, and making strategic decisions about when and where to stop. You need to think several steps ahead, not just about the next hour, but about the next week, month, and beyond. The train isn't your salvation. It's a tool, a vehicle, a temporary fortress. Use it wisely, and it could carry you to safety. Treat it as a guaranteed refuge, and it becomes a rolling coffin. Your survival starts with accepting reality, adapting quickly, and never forgetting that in the end, the real challenge isn't the zombies outside. It's maintaining your humanity and your will to keep going when everything falls apart.